go ahead and get to the meat of today's webinar by first talking about the project evaluation needs. And thinking about the project evaluation needs, there are really two components. They reflect the funder's expectations, so at least understanding what the requirements are, but then also the project needs reflect what the project is going to need to learn from the evaluation in order to meet the outlined objectives. So let's first talk about the funder expectations, or first just get an understanding of how you understand what the actual requirements are for the evaluation. So the first component is that you want to make sure that you're really searching through the solicitation. And that may sound slightly self-evident, but it's really important that you take a concerted look at the solicitation for information related to the evaluation. And so one of the ways to be able to do that is that actually doing a search of the term. What I do is eval with UA at the end of it so that it will pick up on words related to evaluation as well as about the evaluator. And one of the reasons why I suggest that you just do a concerted look around information related to the evaluation or the evaluator is just depending on the solicitation, that information can be really dispersed throughout that document. So it may not just be contained in one area, but just really spread throughout the solicitation. So you want to make sure that you are making a concerted effort to, as soon as possible, understand what the expectations are, because the expectations can relate to what the funding is, how much money you can spend on the evaluation, as well as just in regards to what other types of, the timing and being able to make sure that you have an individual that that you may need to identify, and being able to have enough time to be able to respond to what that information is as you're putting your proposal together. The other component that you want to make sure that you're looking at as well is just reviewing the program webpage for additional information. And this is particularly important if you're dealing with perhaps a newer program, because what I've seen with some funding agencies with some newer programs, there's a lot of updates and a lot of clarification around the program overall, but specifically related to the evaluation. So you want to make sure that you're staying current and that you're really making sure that you're staying on top of what the funders are expecting in terms of the evaluation. So as I was starting to get to before, what are some of those common expectations around the evaluation? Well, one expectation can really be in regards to knowledge generation. And knowledge generation is really in regards to how the evaluation findings or how findings are actually contributing to a broader body of knowledge. And sometimes the evaluation is expected to fill a knowledge generation component, so you want to be made aware of that. The other piece, too, is in regards to, is there an emphasis on continuous improvement? And that's really the focus of the evaluation findings, is how is the project team going to use the findings to help with implementation and the changes with the project. And I would say that even if the solicitation doesn't highlight continuous improvement, that's something that you will want to make sure that you include within the evaluation. But if that is identified in the solicitation, you just want to make sure you're emphasizing and making sure you're really telling the reviewers in the grant proposal how the evaluation findings are going to be used. The other component that we often see as part of expectations are really being able to identify success metrics. So having specific metrics or indicators of success at different stages, you want to make sure that you're articulating that. If you're the project team writing this component, you may want to make sure that whoever's responsible for the evaluation, that they're involved in that conversation as well to help really think through what would be appropriate at different stages. And then the last piece, again, what I was starting to allude to earlier, is that sometimes the solicitation will say that you need to identify an independent or external evaluator right in the evaluation plan. And if that's the case, then you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to be able to identify someone who will be a right fit for that project. So those are some of the aspects of the funder expectations. What about thinking about the project team needs? One of the ways to start thinking about what the needs are for the project team is just thinking about the project as a small and a larger undertaking. And that's kind of a good frame, a good initial way to think about the variation in projects. But there's also a couple of different additional dimensions that you can examine a project by to say, is it small or is it large? And one dimension is in regards to the nature of the intervention itself. So is that intervention something that is less newly developed in terms of its initiatives, or is it something that's more newly developed? So you can kind of conceptualize that in terms of, is it being replicated? Is it something that's being adapted? Something that's already existed, but you're putting into a new context? That's kind of could be smaller. Or is it something that's really unique, something that's relatively underdeveloped, and that you're going to have to figure out how to fully implement? Another dimension to consider in terms of thinking about various dimensions of projects and understanding what the needs are to be able to understand what you need to learn is in regards to the complexity of the systems. So are there less systems that are involved in implementing the project? Or are there a large number of systems? So thinking about a small number of systems, maybe the project just involves one department. And even within one department, that it's one subject matter, more contained. Or is this an initiative that involves multiple departments, multiple institutions, and is a multi-site initiative? In that case, as you can see, that's just going to impact on a lot of different systems. So you want to think about that in terms of the aspects of the project and what the project team may actually need. A final dimension is in regards to just thinking about the extent of the shared vision. Is there less divergence of the vision or more convergence? Or is there just kind of more divergence? So everyone is thinking about the initiative in a really different way. And one way to kind of think about this is that in terms of project planning, is everyone on the same board and really was able to kind of share ideas about how to approach the initiative? Or was there less opportunity to be able to work together as a larger team in terms of the proposal development? And that's something that's going to have to occur after the project is actually implemented. And I should say, if you want more information in that regards, in terms of how the project is being developed during the grant application development phase, I would suggest that you go to one of our webinars, Don't Tell Me I Have to Write That, and really talk about how do you create that alignment during the proposal writing component. And I should also say, in terms of thinking about the various dimensions of a small and large project, I also suggest that you go to one of our coffee break webinars on the three-part formula in which we talk about that dimension, those dimensions of whether it's a small project or a large project, and how do you approach writing an evaluation plan depending on the size of that initiative as a resource for you. So let me pause there.